This podcast is brought to you by LMU Munich.
Yeah, maybe we can just have a little discussion about this topic. So I'd be really curious, what brings people here with this talk or with this topic today, because actually one of the fears, like at the back of my mind when I wrote the abstract for the talk and then submitted it, was like, okay, are people, it's potentially not going to be a very technical talk, so are people even going to care about this, and is anyone going to come and listen to me? So I don't know, does anyone want to say anything about that? Like what brought you here? Yeah.
I have exactly the same problem November 7th.
Okay.
In 2 weeks, we have 2 weeks time for an app.
Okay, very interesting.
So maybe add something to the checklist.
Well, I hope so, yeah. I definitely hope so. There will be some takeaways. I'd love to chat after the talk as well, so anyway.
Well, actually, I think we can stop the awkwardness now. I think it's time to begin the talk. Daniel Bader is going to look at carcasses. The name of his talk is a Shopify app postmortem. Please give a warm welcome to him.
Thanks so much. All right, yeah, so, my name is Daniel Bader, and the title of my talk is Building and Launching a SaaS Product with Python in 2 Weeks, a Shopify app postmortem. Now, what the hell is that, right? Like, that's a mouthful. There's so many words in that title, and it just sounds like a lot of work, and it sounds like something really complicated. So why don't we start with something really simple? Because it all starts with a dream. Imagine you're a software developer, and I know many of you are, because this is a Python conference after all. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could use your programming skills to completely change how you make money, how you make your income? Like, what if you could generate passive income and you wouldn't have a boss or a manager, looming over you, watching over your shoulder, micromanaging you? And what if you could work from anywhere in the world and actually make money while you're asleep? And I know, this sounds like so completely scammy, and like some people are getting up, getting ready to leave the room, but bear with me for a second. Like, if you were to think about it, and that was your dream, and you wanted to make it a reality where you wouldn't be trading your time for money in a salary job or doing consulting work for clients, how could you do that? And I think the answer for software developers specifically is to do products. Because as software engineers, we're in a unique spot for creating products. We can create software from nothing. Like, give me a laptop, give me internet, and I can create a product that could very well make enough money to sustain one person or more people. Like, people have built actual companies like that. And so the cool thing about products is that, you create them once, and you can keep selling them after that. So you kind of invest your time up front. And they're a way to gain your financial freedom and potentially your financial independence. And they're potentially a vehicle or a way for you to enjoy a lot more control over your work and your life. And now the funny thing is that for some people this isn't a dream. And I'm not one of those people, by the way, just to put that up front. For some people, this is reality, right? There are many people who are software engineers who are no smarter than us here in this room, and they are living this dream, and they're making their income from software products that they built themselves. And I'm not talking about the founders of Facebook or Apple or whatever. You can move those aside as outliers. But there's a surprising number of people who are doing this on a smaller scale, and I feel like a much more attainable scale. And so what if you could take the first step towards that goal and realizing that dream and actually ship a paid software product with Python, which is everybody's favorite language? And what if you could do that? Take the first step towards that in just 2 weeks. That'd be freaking amazing, right? Like, you'd look like that guy. And again, hold on, what's going on here? This is supposed to be a tech conference. This is supposed to be a tech talk, like where's all the code, right? So what qualifies you to talk about this stuff, Daniel? So, like I said, my name is Daniel, and I have had, and actually still have, that very same dream. I'm a software engineer by trade and by passion, so I really love coding. Python is my favorite language by far. I actually studied here in Munich, then worked as a software engineer. Sometime later, I moved to Canada to continue working as a software engineer. And a while ago, I decided to go independent. So I started a one-man consulting business, and I mostly did prototyping work, building SaaS apps for clients, and also some coaching and teaching Python on the side. And actually, this change completely changed how I viewed my career as a software engineer. And with that newfound flexibility that I got from moving away from a salaried position to a more consulting client work position, gave me the flexibility to actually try and live out that product dream. And so my strategy was to go and make a commitment to really explore this idea of building products. And my strategy for that was, okay, I'm going to cut my expenses as much as I can to extend my runway, take some money that I made with a larger consulting project and just go for this product idea for 6 months and then see what happens. I haven't starved yet, so that's good. Of course, the next question was, well, how do you do this, right? How do you move on and do take the next step? And I figured probably someone else has done something like that, right? And maybe I can learn from their mistakes. So I started seeking out information on how to possibly do this. And I found a community of people who were doing what I wanted, and many of them were software engineers themselves. They kind of have a funny name. They call themselves micropreneurs, which I guess is a wordplay on entrepreneurship on a small scale, and the philosophy that they were offering was really a counterpoint to this ideal of the funded startup. And what I mean by that is, typically when, let's say you talk to your family, or like when I talk with my family about this topic, and you mentioned you want to start a software company, they'll be like, oh, okay, so you're going to take on like millions of funding and then, build some social media app or whatever, and then something's going to happen, and 7 years later, you're going to be a millionaire. But the thing is, like, what I found, and I have done the startup circuit, and what I found is that this idea that someone gives you a lot of money to like try out a business idea with this giant boom or bust scheme, in a lot of ways it can be super flawed, and it can be like often lead to disastrous results, right? Because most people are not going to build the next Apple and Facebook. And so that idea of like getting millions of users and then trying to figure out what to do later to monetize that, it just usually doesn't work. But that seems to be the predominant idea of how this is done. And another realization was that, these really large companies, they can't target markets and niches that a 1 or 3 person company could very well target successfully and actually make a pretty fantastic living out of that. And so, well, I just started kicking around these ideas and like, seeking out more content in this space. And I found that there was a lot of stuff out there already. So people were putting, they were writing books about this and putting out content. And I've got a collection of this stuff on my website where you can find links to all of those books and podcasts and everything, and much more like extra links. And I'm also putting the slides there. So maybe you want to check that out. And really how it started for me is that I bought like the first book that I listed up there by someone by the name of Mike Tabor. And he also has a podcast called Startups for the Rest of Us with his friend Rob Walling. Rob Walling also wrote a book. I also read that book. And I just got suckered into that mindset, essentially. And there's actually also a German community for that as well. So there's a podcast called Nebenberuf Startup, which I would also highly recommend if you speak German. And then there's conferences and yada, yada, yada. So eventually I made the decision, okay, so this is potentially realistic. I want to launch a small software product as a one-man show. How do I do it quickly? Now, a good strategy seemed to be launching a small product really quickly into an existing marketplace. Because then, even if you don't really know what you're doing, there's a chance that you might succeed and actually, make some money or just not fail completely. And so what I saw a lot of people were doing is that they were building WordPress plugins and selling them on one of the WordPress plugin marketplaces. And then that's nice. I mean, WordPress is super popular. Millions of websites are built on WordPress. On the other hand, it's not Python. And it can also, you talk to some people and can incur a huge support burden, because with these plugins, what you do is you essentially throw a bunch of PHP code over the wall, and someone installs that. You don't know what's going on in their WordPress install. And hopefully things work out, but if they don't, then, you're kind of on the line for that, right? Because they paid you money for that product. So it didn't seem all that appealing. I looked at the mobile app stores. It seemed kind of interesting, but on the other hand, it seemed like it was mostly consumers looking for entertainment-style apps. And it seemed really hard to, there seemed to be a price war going on of sorts, where people were expecting these apps to be free, and there's ways to monetize that through a freemium model and ads, but it just seems so complicated, right? I wanted a simple model where it's here, I give you the app, it does something for you, you give me money. Just very, very simple. And it also seemed super crowded. So again, not that interesting. So I started looking at other options and eventually found the Shopify App Store. And I want to clarify what Shopify is and what the Shopify App Store is first. So Shopify is a Canadian company. They kind of have one main product that is a hosted e-commerce platform. So they sell that on a subscription basis, which means people use it to build online stores, right? To sell stuff online. And Shopify has an App Store component to it where you can build plugins and extensions for these stores and then sell it through Shopify. And now a good mental model to think about this is that it's a more SaaS-like way of doing these WordPress plugins. So what do I mean by that? Well, the thing is that you don't actually send these shop owners your code because Shopify is closed source. But the way it works is that there's a clear interface you can use to interact with people's stores. And really what you're building is a web app. So you're not building a Python module, but you're building an actual web app. So if you already have some web development skills, this is where they come in really, really handy. And Shopify does a lot of the plumbing for you. So they handle the billing, trial subscriptions, user management, permissions handling, and all of that in their API. And they also let you advertise your app in their app store. So similarly to the way it works in the mobile app stores. Now, the downside is that they take a 20% cut out of your revenue. Now, why should we care as Python developers who potentially want to do an experiment like that or want to build their first product? I think we should care because these plugins are just web apps. So Python is great for building web apps. We have many of the world's best frameworks for doing that. For example, Django, Flask, there's tons more. And so if you already have some Python skills, that's where they could potentially become handy. And another thing that's nice is that I think building an app like that is a really good way to test out an idea and then potentially graduating it to a standalone product, right? In the beginning, you could just offload much of the utility stuff to the Shopify API. And then once you get some traction with your idea, you could replace that with your own payment provider and so on to grow past your reliance on the Shopify API. And I found that really appealing. And probably the biggest reason from a business perspective was that, okay, so these store merchants, they're using Shopify to make money, right? That's their business. They're not looking for games or entertainment, but they're running these stores to sell stuff and make a living. So I think it's fair to assume that people are just a lot more willing to pay for apps like that help them improve their business and make more money. So taking all of that in and kind of digesting that information, I decided to build the smallest useful app that I could imagine, and gave myself initially a week and then decided to expand it to 2 weeks to go from nothing to like shipping a working app. And I'm not trying to sell you the app, and I'm not affiliated with Shopify or anything, but just so we have a working example, I just want to show you quickly what the app is about. So it's called Nearby Store Notification. It's a relatively simple idea. What the app does is location-targeted promotions. So the idea is that, okay, a store merchant installs the app, they can define points of interest in a physical location or several physical locations, and then they can define a radius around those, and now when you get someone visiting their web store on their phone or on their computer, the app's going to do a GeoIP lookup and figure out the approximate location of that person. And if they're within the boundaries of a point of interest, and it wouldn't actually work at that street block level, it's more like city level or region level even, then that person is going to get a little pop-up, right, where you could say like, oh, everyone in Munich gets free shipping today. So like a relatively simple idea, people can style that a little bit and like make it look like the theme that they're using on their store. And there's some admin stuff to it, but really that's like the user-facing functionality, right? And so with the admin stuff, I just decided to go like the quickest route. Like this is just bootstrap a plain Django form, and it was really easy to do that quickly. And so actually how it works from a technical perspective is that, again, Shopify gives you a lot of this stuff already out of the box. Like you're just integrating your content by loading it inside an iframe, inside the existing Shopify admin. So again, you can whip up something that kind of looks seamless, and they seem to be using like a modified version of Bootstrap, so if you use Bootstrap, it kind of looks similar. That's nice. So now I want to talk a little bit about building a Shopify app with Python specifically. And so, like I said, these plugins are actually web apps. So we're building a web app, and Python is great for that. For Shopify specifically, I found a couple of things that maybe you want to look out for if you're trying to build your own Shopify app. So Shopify is really focused on Ruby. Their whole platform is a giant Ruby on Rails app, and it shows a little bit. Like they support all kinds of different languages and have like tooling for them and modules and examples, but you can tell that, for example, the Django app hasn't been updated in 3 years, and so it was still helpful, but also it took some time to really do some digging and figure out what's going on. Then their authentication flow, it's based on OAuth. It was always fun to integrate. Nothing terrible, but again, I found that I had changed it in subtle ways a couple of times, and so a lot of the examples that I had found, they weren't actually up to date anymore. And whatever you do, I think JavaScript skills are definitely very helpful if you're doing any kind of integration on people's stores and trying to change like the user experience there. So there's a really great book called Third Party JavaScript I recommend. And again, I've got many more resources linked on that page. Like there's actually, for example, a Python Shopify API wrapper that I used that worked really well. And this last module, you probably also want to check that out. It was really helpful, but I only found it on like the last day of this experiment. Okay, so now because this is called a postmortem, really what's the idea with the postmortem talk is to talk a little bit more about the results and share what came out of this experiment. So I want to start with the what went right section, because I know you're all waiting for the bad stuff, but let's start with the, I'm optimistic, right? So let's start with the good stuff first. So for me, the biggest thing was that, I built this app and shipped it, and I actually charged money for it. And this sounds, I know this sounds stupid, but it was a huge sticking point for me to actually go and feel comfortable with, asking for money in exchange for what the app did. Like even on like the last couple of days, I remember I was thinking, oh, you know what? I should really make this free. Like this is not good enough. Like this is not adding enough value. Like this should really be just a free app. Come on, Daniel, make it a free app. And I didn't do it because I had committed to shipping this and making it a paid app and charging like $5 a month for this. And so, speaking of charging money for it, boom, right? So the total earnings for the app are at a little bit more than $70, which is, that's not great. I mean, after paying for hosting, I could probably buy a couple of beers, not for everyone. So on the other hand, it felt absolutely incredible. Like it just felt amazing waking up in the morning and realizing that I had, gotten a new subscriber, and I checked the logs and seeing that they had been charged money and it showed up in my PayPal account. And that was just mind-blowing in a way and awesome, because I was literally asleep when that happened. And so, I would encourage everyone who hasn't had that experience yet, then to try and get to that point, because it's going to feel amazing if if you did that as a one-person experiment. And I think it's going to be a huge motivator, like it definitely was for me. The other thing that I think went right is some of the marketing that I did. So a lot of you will be familiar with the term programmer art, right? Where someone who's really not talented with the artsy, drawy stuff kind of goes and does it anyway, and it's usually kind of crappy, but sometimes it's okay. So I feel like I'm doing programmer marketing. And what's pretty cool, again, about the Shopify App Store is that they force you to set up a sales page. So they give you a fixed template and they tell you all the stuff that goes into it, right? They ask you to do a video and like you can put these 3 bullet points and 4 screenshots and yada, yada, yada. And the way you do it is like through this web form, which you probably can't read right now, but they kind of walk you through the whole process. And I picked up a lot of patterns there that I'm going to be able to reuse with my next product. And so I felt like that was great just to have something as a baseline to start out with. Okay, what went wrong? That's what I'm always waiting for. Well, number one, the app was too complicated. Like, why do the geo-IP stuff? I felt like it was a really good idea, but honestly, like no one cares. So that was, maybe I could have launched something in a week, right? I think for the next app, I want to look for something that's potentially even smaller or a lot bigger so that I can provide more value. Number 2 was a relatively useless landing page that I had set up. So I had actually went and bought nearbyStoreNotification.com, set that up as like a pre-launch page, trying to get some email signups, try and get people interested in the app. But the thing is, because I only had 2 weeks for building and launching this thing, or had only given myself 2 weeks, there was like no way this would do anything for me, because, well, I put up the page and then launched the app. So like, why do that? I mean, I would still recommend maybe you get the domain if you want to do something bigger with your app idea. But really with a model like mine, where you're thinking like ship it, ship it, ship it, I didn't really benefit from that at all because of the short time frame. And like the biggest fail in this project was that I just built what I wanted to build, right? So it all comes down to what your audience wants and what kind of app they would want to buy and pay you for. And to a large degree, I still don't know what Shopify store owners want. And I know that if I want to be successful with an app, I need to come up with a process to figure out how to learn that. And that's really the next challenge for me. And so in terms of what's next, well, I'm not rich yet, but I'm super hooked on products. So I actually launched another product, which is a book for Python developers. Check it out if you want. I don't want to go on too long about that. And I believe I can get there, within the next year, to actually pay for my expenses by shipping more of these small product experiments. And that concludes my talk. You can find the slides and everything on my website. Be very happy to chat about this stuff, outside in the hallway or now if you have any questions. Thanks.
Yes, Daniel, thank you very much for the talk. Indeed, we have time for a few questions. Please fire away.
Ditch consulting and go to products. It's hard, but it's rewarding. I think that was the best decision we did. The best decision we did in our, time span of our company. So I would suggest when you're looking for products, like what do you want to do? Like, first test out if there is an audience before you build it. There's a mantra called if you build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to. That's not true. We've built, I think, 5 or 6 products before we have the 7th one, which actually sells, because we just built it and then there was actually no target audience for it. So test that you have an audience before you start building it. The other one is I suggest you go very niche, because if you go very niche, it's going to be easy to market. And then there's a question: how do you do the creative process? How did you come up with this idea? What was the creative process?
That's a good question. I guess, so
Repeat the question.
Oh yeah,
please.
repeat the question, of course. So what was the creative process like to come up with this product idea? So I'm doing a thing where I have like a note-taking app on my phone, and I just constantly, like whenever I have some random idea on like that could potentially be a product, I write it down. And then let's say every quarter, I go through all of these random ideas and try and like rank them by, is this a good idea? Is it just something crazy, or like what are the probabilities of success? And then I try to pick something out of that and then go for it and develop that idea. So I think I did that with that app as well. I'm not sure.
How do you rank them? Like
how do I rank them?
Like how do you calculate probability of
Yeah,
success?
yeah. Just by gut feeling. But really, what I started doing with the book, for example, which did much better from a financial perspective, I spent a lot of time reading Reddit and just digging into forums, talking to people, and actually finding out what they're interested in, and then like feeling out the space with a couple of blog posts, seeing what people were interested in, and then following up with an actual product. So yeah, I can totally corroborate to what you're saying. Yeah.
We have another
One more
question here. Which
Right.
So the platform that you published your application on is not a Python platform, but obviously it was deployed to a Python environment somewhere. Can you say something briefly about the technical details of how all that joined up together?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, you're basically building a web app in Python, right? So I built a Django app, deployed that on Heroku with all the standard tools that you would use to do something like that quickly. Cost me about $7 a month in hosting. The GeoIP service I built as a Go service. Again, why do that? Why do it? Why go through all of that work? But like that's running somewhere else. And then what you do, you make API calls to the Shopify platform, and that's how you integrate your app, and then that's how it affects like people's actual stores. Yeah. Cool. Time for one more question.
It appears no more questions.
Okay.
Then again, thank you very much for
Excellent.
this interesting
Thank you.
talk.